Welcome. This past Wednesday, May 19th, the late Malcolm X would have turned 74 years old. In this edition, three women who knew him and knew this exceptional man well will share some of their remembrances of him. Now, in a 1962 speech in Los Angeles, Malcolm had some pointed comments about African-American women.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And as Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women and to protect our women. And the only time a Muslim really gets real violent is when someone goes to molest his woman. We will kill you for our woman. I'm making it plain, yes. We will kill you for our woman. We believe that if the white man will do whatever is necessary to see that his woman gets respect and protection, then you and I will never be recognized as men until we stand up like men and place the same penalty over the head of anyone who puts his filthy hands out to put in the direction of our women.
Vicki Garvin is a veteran political activist. I welcome you to Like It Is. She's joined by Jean Reynolds of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. Welcome to Like It Is. And Khadija Canton of Mosque Sabur. I welcome you to Like It Is.
Thank you.
I guess each of you, we might begin this talk by just you letting me know the circumstances under which you first met Malcolm. How did you meet him, Ms. Garvin?
I met Malcolm in the 40s when he was working as a waiter and a bartender at Small's Paradise on what was then called 7th Avenue near 135th Street. I worked nearby in the New York Urban League, in fact. And I would go there to have my lunch quite frequently. He's a very charismatic young man. He's very pleasant, and his customers really liked him. He was known then as Detroit Red. You know, so often when we say red, that means he's radical or communist. Or red is usually bestowed on people because of their politics. But Malcolm was called Red because of the shade of his hair. It had nothing at all to do with what he was thinking about not back in the 40s.
Mm-hmm. And you became friends?
No. He would be what I would call now a kind of hippie type. Mm-hmm. Back in the 40s, he was quite young.
I see. So the transformation had not yet occurred?
No.
This is before prison and all of that?
No. He was just Detroit Red. It was only years after that. He was always pleasant and courteous, but we didn't have any kind of exchange of a conversation at that time.
When did you really begin to get to know him?
Well, it was many years after that. But I began to see him on the street corners making speeches, usually from a ladder. And, well, we've had all kinds of people on the street talking. And I stopped to listen to hear what he was going to say. And he was talking about the white devil. And you know how bad things were here for people of color. And I said, man, I know you must know something. Because if I was on that ladder, I would say the same thing.
Did he remember you from the Smalls Paradise
No.
days? He didn't.
that was a very popular place, as you might remember, and there were people coming and going. I didn't go there that frequently, and we never had anything to talk about.
Okay.
So I would just stand there and listen to him. But he wasn't just beefing about how bad things were. He also spent some time to be critical of his own people. And that certainly would include me, because God knows I made mistakes.
They say he was an equal opportunity critic.
Well,
Everybody who needed a spanking got it from Malcolm, I heard.
well, when he began to be critical of us, I said, man, you're dialectical. Because no people of any race or color are monolithic. So I said, well, maybe, you know, he's saying all these things to sort of wake people up. So that, you know, in addition to us criticizing other people, we would anticipate that somebody would criticize us.
Let me interrupt and ask you, did you ever go to the mosque? Did you ever follow him into that phase of his life?
No.
Okay. Let me move on. We'll come back. We've got a lot to
Okay.
talk about, Ms. Garvin, but I'd like to ask this to Jean Reynolds. When did you first meet him?
I believe it was late 50s or early 60s. That,
He's in the nation now.
yes, absolutely.
You were in the nation.
After I've seen Brother Malcolm, I had no other choice.
What do you mean? Where did you hear him first?
I heard him first through a Sister Winifred, who's the wife, was the wife of the late Brother Butch, as I call him, Gladstone,
Yeah, Gladstone.
Alexander. And we worked together at AT&T. And I noticed at lunchtime every day, this sister would sit to herself with a book. She was always pleasant. There was just something about her that drew me to her. And I would say to her, why don't you ever come to lunch? Or, well, you know, well, no, I'll, you know, just sit here. And she was reading a book that day. And she was so interested in the book, I asked to see the name of it. And
Let me
she showed
interrupt you. We got to go and take another break, but before we do that, we'll continue with you after this break. But going into the break, we have a clip of Malcolm talking about a situation in a certain part of Africa that might have been delivered this past week as far as its relevance.
I think that the white people should be ashamed of the deplorable situation that has been existing in the Congo, which is not the fault of the Congolese, but which is the result of instigation by European powers who are fighting each other over the mineral wealth of the Congo. And now to make it appear that the Congolese themselves are criminals or brutes because they're reacting to these injustices that they've been victimized by is again ducking the question.
I rudely interrupted your narrative of you're getting to hear Malcolm for the first time, and your friend used to disappear at lunch hour.
right.
Uh-huh.
And I noticed there was just something about her that drew me to her. And when I asked the name of the book she was reading that day, she showed it to me. And the name of it was We Charge Genocide. And she opened the cover, and on the inside of the cover was a tree with a young black brother hanging from the tree. Well, I immediately lost my appetite, and I sat down and I asked her, where could I get the book, you know. And she said she really wasn't even supposed to have it. But if I was interested in things of that nature or knowing about my people, that I could come with her to the, we then called it the temple. And I said, oh, sure. And I did go with her one Friday, I believe it was. And I haven't been the same since.
What happened?
When I first entered, there was a big picture on the stage of the tree with the brothers. I can't remember if it was one brother or two, hanging from it. And beneath it was freedom, justice, and equality, or something to that effect, you know. And I was just so interested in the picture and the composure of the brothers and sisters, and you know, I was just something I had never ever experienced.
Then what happened?
And then when I heard Brother Malcolm speak, you know, that really did something to me. It was almost like I had never had any injections for anything, and then that day I got I got all my injections. You know, just immediately I had no problem whatsoever believing or understanding what he said, none whatsoever.
All right, let me move to Kadia Canton. When did and how did you first meet Malcolm?
I met Malcolm through a co-worker, Gouverneur Hospital. She was a part of the temple at that time. It was the early 50s. And she invited me to the temple at that time. And I went to hear him. And I was very, very elated because he said something to me that I thought should have been said a long time ago by somebody else, but whatever. He told us as women that we had to be respected and that that was their job at that time. And I had never heard that before from any black man. So therefore, I knew this is where I should be. If they're going to respect me and protect me, I knew that I should belong to Mosque or Temple number 7 at that time.
Did you get to know him right away, or did it take a while?
No, it didn't take too long because I used to go, after that, I used to go just about every meeting that they had. And at that time was like Wednesdays, Fridays, and then the Saturdays, and I found myself eventually going 7 days a week because they always had something going on, and it was like a family at first, you know. And I felt very much at home, and I was very upset with my family because they couldn't understand why this close connection all of a sudden. So, and I became very, very fond of the brother as a brother.
Did you get to know each other well?
Not too well. We got in a working condition, you know. There were some things that I did that had me in the presence of Malcolm at times, other than inside the temple, which I appreciated, and I learned quite a bit from it.
Did he change your life in any specific way? Did you start?
Yes.
In what way?
Because I agreed with everything they said. I had no fault for anything that they said at that time.
Nothing?
Nothing. I had no qualms about whatever I was doing or whatever I saw or whatever I heard. I agreed with it 100%.
I never was privileged to meet Malcolm, but it's no secret that he had a certain way of expressing himself when it came to racism, and white racism in particular. Did you at any point feel uncomfortable about some of the things he said about white people?
No.
No?
Because as a child, I had a lot of problems in Westchester County, raising up as a black girl. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I always felt there was something wrong. And as I grew older, I began to see certain things that I hadn't noticed before, but I still couldn't put my finger on it. Why this was happening, why was it going this way, and why were we being treated the way we were being treated? You know, we had never done anything to anybody, and I felt we had the right to share whatever America had to offer at that time.
Ms. Garvin, did he make you uncomfortable in some of the things that you heard him say?
No, I thought he was telling it like it is, really. And we had, you know, this, I think I shared his analysis of what history was and what, you know, current reality is. I never went to the mosque because I was a member of Abbott Senior Baptist Church. I had been baptized there. And I was very much influenced by Adam Powell, Jr., because he was what I would call a liberation theologist. And he was engaged in a lot of political work. And I was pretty devoted to the church then, and it never occurred to me to go to the mosque. I never had any discussion with him until then.
Malcolm X used to talk about the police. In those days, it was pretty much as much of a problem as it is now. And before we take another break, we have a clip of Malcolm in Los Angeles in 1962 talking about police.
The controlled press, the white press, inflames the white public against Negroes. The police are able to use it to paint the Negro community as a criminal element. The police are able to use the press to make the white public think that 90% or 99% of the Negroes in the Negro community are criminals. And once the white public is convinced that most of the Negro community is a criminal element, then this automatically paves the way for the police to move into the Negro community, exercising Gestapo tactics, stopping any black man who is on the sidewalk, whether he is guilty or whether he is innocent, whether he is well-dressed or whether he is poorly dressed, whether he is educated or whether he is dumb, whether he's a Christian or whether he's a Muslim. As long as he is black and a member of the Negro community, the white public thinks that the white policeman is justified in going in there and trampling on that man's civil rights and on that man's human rights. Once the police have convinced the white public that the so-called Negro community is a criminal element, they can go in and question, brutalize, murder unarmed, innocent Negroes, and the white public is gullible enough to back them up. This makes the Negro community a police state. This makes the Negro neighborhood a police state. It's the most heavily patrolled. It has more police in it than any other neighborhood, yet it has more crime in it than any other neighborhood. How can you have more cops and more crime? Why? It shows you that the cops must be in cahoots with the criminal.
Our guest was saying that Malcolm X might have said those words yesterday.
It's certainly a police state. Nobody would challenge that.
What were the qualities of this man that struck you most?
He was sincere, and he was kind, and you could always talk to him no matter what the situation was, no matter what time it was.
Right.
He always considered each individual as his brother or his sister, and he never denied you any request that it was possible for him to do for you. That's how I saw him, and that's how I reacted to him. And that's how he reacted to me. I had to go to him many times about little things and big things. And he never said to me, oh, you know how to handle it, or whatever the case may be. He might give me a parable and say, you know, look before you leap, or something like that. But other than that, he was always there for you if you needed him.
What would you say struck you about his persona?
Well, I want to co-sign everything Sister Khadijah said, because that's the way, you know, he appeared to me. But the major thing about him for me was his sincerity, was the fact that he held fast to truth, and he never, ever was too busy to hold over the meeting just to answer my questions. And I later found out that many of the sisters, including Sister Betty, were, you know, used to, well, Jean, we could have been out of there if it wasn't for you, just asking all those questions. But I wanted to know, and I was figuring, well, everybody else would equally be eager to know. And then I realized that no. But he always took time, that, and with all of his seriousness, you know, and his determination to make us see the light, you know, he had time for humor.
Did he?
Yes, he did. He
Really?
certainly did. Let me give you an example. He was speaking one day about Jim Crow and, you know, people trying to say that it didn't exist and they're doing it in a different way now, or they're, you know, he says, but it's the same thing, same Jim Crow, only now they call it James Crow, you know, to make it proper. He was really, you know, he was just a, what can I tell you, brother?
Did he inspire you to increase your reading?
Oh, most definitely. Not only my reading, but he made me take a look at myself and my family, and gave me the way to really how to raise my family, my children. I don't know what might have become of me had I not entered the doors at that mosque on 116th Street. I know this may be off the record, but may I say this to you? I want to tell you how much I admire and respect you. You know, no, I'm serious, brother, because you are the only one that I know that really, you know, tried to bring the truth to people about Brother Malcolm. And you're honest enough to say that you didn't know him or anything, but in my eyesight, you could do no wrong. For all of the things that you didn't do during that time, you've made up for it 1,000 times, always mentioning him and everything. And I want to tell you that I am very proud of you, and I am very happy. And I wouldn't care if I was in China and I would skate over here. Just any opportunity that I get to raise his name and keep his name going, and so he won't ever be forgotten. So I want to thank you for that publicly, for what, I'm serious.
The thanks goes to Malcolm, you know, who played a major role in my development. That's nice of you to say that.
Yeah.
Vicki Garvin, Malcolm's rapid development as a nationalist and viewing our problem not in local terms but global terms. Did you bear witness to that? Did you see that happen? Was it noticeable to you, or was it gradual?
Well, I didn't really get to know Malcolm until he had come back from Mecca.
Ah.
That's when I spent some time with him. And he, you know, came by way of Africa, of course. And he ended up in Ghana, where I happened to have been then. I went to Ghana in the 1960s. I hadn't seen Malcolm or anything then. But I lived through the McCarthy period, and I needed a breath of fresh air. So I said, now why don't I go to Africa? That's my ancient homeland. I had seen enough of the Tarzan pictures.
And that's where you met him? That's where you saw him again, in Ghana?
That was the next time. It was in the 1960s. And he stayed in Ghana for quite a bit. Well, when we heard that he was coming, there was a pretty large number of African Americans who had gone to Ghana because they were impressed with Nkrumah, and they wanted to be a part of Africa. So Julian Mayfield was there at the time. You remember Julian, of course. And he invited him to his house. And all of the other blacks who were living in Ghana at that time, who had come there even for a temporary period, but to contribute whatever they could. The house was filled.
Hold that point. We need to take a break, and we'll continue with your narrative. But before we go to a break, a last clip. This is of Malcolm X talking about the issue of violence, for which he was so grossly misunderstood. See what he has to say.
And then again, if we tell you that Negroes are being hung on the tree or being shot down illegally, unjustly, and those Negroes should do something to protect themselves, you say you're advocating violence. The white man is tricking you. He's trapping you. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in South Vietnam. Please. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in Berlin. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he didn't say get nonviolent. He said, praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition.
All right, I interrupted you, Ms. Garvin. You were telling me that there was a large gathering in somebody's home.
Yes.
To hear Malcolm and meet him.
Yes.
Before you tell me what he had to say, did he comment at all about what had gone wrong in the Nation of Islam? He was out by then.
Yes. No, he didn't speak very much about that. But he did say that he did describe how well he was received by the people in Mecca. And we thought, oh man, you accepting the white folks now. You're going to stop being critical of them, because he was so well received by people who belong, you know, to the Muslim Nation of Islam, that he spoke mainly about that the first night we saw him. Well, then there were several of us. We knew that he was going to be well received by, you know, all the top people there. But there were several of us who had been in Ghana for a while. I had gone to Africa, and I went first to Nigeria and spent almost 2 years there. And then when my boss, who was a Nigerian businessman, was going out of business, I was on my way going back home. But I knew Dr. Du Bois was there and other people, and I had great respect for Nkrumah. So I fell in love with Ghana. And so a lot of us who had been there for a while had decided that maybe we could introduce him to people that he obviously wouldn't get a chance to meet if he's just going to meet with, you know, top government people. And my suggestion was, I had no special skills to contribute to Ghana, but I was teaching English at the Foreign Language Institute to a lot of Ghanaian and other people.
Let me press you for the crux of your comments because of the constraints of time. Mm-hmm. What was the impact of that meeting that you arranged?
Well, I was teaching conversational English.
No, I mean, how did the people react to Malcolm?
Oh, man, he was well received. There ain't no question about that. He didn't have to go and, well, of course he would go and see the president, you know, any other official who invited him. He was welcomed. There's no question about it.
All right, let me move on, and I beg you to forgive my bad manners, but yeah, we've got time constraints. On this question of what went wrong in the nation, maybe I should ask you, Sister Khadija, what happened?
What happened? Many things happened, but one thing in particular, greed happened, jealousy and envy.
Can you specify?
Well, being that Malcolm was in the forefront in dealing with the East Coast, he became a threat to some people because he was teaching Elijah Muhammad's program very well and being very successful with it, to the point where I thought sometimes he was very naive.
About?
About the teachings. By this time, commercialism had set in. It was no more like a family structure. Everything was business, you know.
Where did commercialism come in? Because the membership grew so large?
Yes.
Because of his magnetism?
Yes. And we got people from all walks of life who had all kinds of ideas and all kinds of means to do what they wanted to do, and a lot of people used it and took advantage of it.
So, how was he perceived as a threat?
Because he believed in truth. No matter who it was, no matter what the circumstances was, he believed in truth.
Let me make it plain. Were there those who were out for the money?
Yes.
And felt that he was in the way?
Yes, I believe so.
Is that what constitutes your remark, greed?
Yes.
They wanted money and he was in the way?
Yes.
What else went wrong? Was it really about the chickens coming home to roost remark about President Kennedy's assassination?
No.
What was it all about?
It was about him being removed by certain people who felt threatened by him, that he may be the one to take over if anything happens to Elijah Muhammad.
Nothing could have happened in the nation unless it had the sanction of Chicago. Is that true?
True.
So are you telling me that, in your view, that Malcolm's ouster was sanctioned by Chicago?
I believe so.
Malcolm loved the messenger. It was his best servant.
That had nothing to do with what went down or what happened. That didn't change people's minds and hearts to do right.
You have been quiet for a long time. You haven't spoken up about what you know. And I'd like you to tell me very briefly why you've been so quiet before we go to our break, and then we'll resume after that. Why have you been quiet all this time?
Because I didn't think it was necessary to speak on it. And I just felt like a lot of injustice happened over the years to a lot of the Muslims who were very naive about the Nation of Islam.
All right, let's see if we can do something to neutralize that naivete. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more right after this. Sister Khadija, you said that you've kept quiet all this time because you didn't think telling anything would do any good?
Right.
What is it that you know that you didn't think would do any good?
I don't consider myself knowing anything other than what has been spoken of before. Everybody wants to say that Malcolm was nothing without Elijah Muhammad, which is probably true, but still give the brother his due. There was so much corruption going on in the Nation of Islam during the time of his ejection. Nobody knew what was going on, and nobody knew what was up and what was down. And the brother had planned a lot of things to build the Nation of Islam bigger than it was. But that still was a threat to some people, because some people never had anything until they came into the Nation of Islam. So, you know, they felt very threatened. If you meet a man who doesn't have any shoes and you give him a pair of shoes, he forget that he didn't have any shoes before once he put them shoes on.
Tell it, sister.
And that's what happened to a lot of us in the Nation of Islam.
You were there when he was assassinated.
Yes.
Tell me what happened.
I was late that day, and that's the first time I had my daughter with me. And Sister Betty was there with all her children that day. And
Were you seated near her?
no,
Okay.
I was about 4 booths from her. I came in and I asked why there was no security. And somebody said something to me, so I went and sat down in a booth. And then
Were you in the OAAU?
Yes.
Okay.
And in the booth was another lady and 2 gentlemen. And I don't know whether they had a radio or a tape recorder. I'm not too sure. And then I remember Brother Benjamin came out and spoke. There's just a lot of things were going on that I was observing. And people were moving around. And then I saw 2 brothers on posts that I knew were not from 7. One of them I knew specifically. He used to be from 7, but we hadn't seen him in a long. And I don't know why these brothers were on post.
What does that mean by on post?
They were standing guard in front of the platform. That's like on post. When the minister speaks, there's always 2 brothers who stand posts.
I didn't know that there was anybody standing post.
Yes, there was. There was 2 brothers.
Uh-huh.
And eventually, Benjamin stopped talking, and nobody else was on the stage but Benjamin. And then Malcolm came out, and he spoke. And some ruckus happened in the audience. And, you know, as he put up his hands and said, you know, try to calm people down. And I turned away and looked back. Then I heard this loud noise. And I turned around, and I looked, and I saw Malcolm go back like this. And I kicked off my shoes. And the gentleman sitting next to me pulled me down. And I told him to get his hands off of me. I jumped up on the table and jumped over 3 more booths to get to Betty and the children. And there was an imam there from Mecca. So I got all of them in the back. And then I went and jumped up on the stage. And there was a brother giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to Malcolm. And I said to him, this is Sister Lorraine, as I was known at that time. I said, can I do anything to help? No, he said, who is it? And I said, Sister Lorraine, can I do anything to help? So he said, yes, or something. I don't know what he said.
Do you know who this person was?
Yes, but I can't remember his name.
He was in the Nation? Or
Yes.
he was in the OAAU?
He was in the Nation, and then I think he came out with the, you know, with the rest of us. And then I bent down to blow air into his mouth, and I wasn't getting anything back, so I said a prayer, and I kissed him, you know, and then I heard all this noise in the back. And I went back there, and Betty was, you know, and I told her, I said, listen, you got to calm down. I said, because you have to go out there and deal with this.
She was hysterical?
Yes, she was hysterical. But she made it out there, and she did what she had to do, you know. And
did you recognize any of the gunmen?
yes. One, I don't know, in between all of this, I don't know, it was after or before, whatever, there was a person standing with someone on the floor, and I said, don't shoot him in the leg, give me the gun.
Go ahead, sister.
I said, blow his brains out. And of course the brothers, you know, whatever happened, you know, so it didn't happen. He didn't give me
Was
the gun.
this Talmadge Hayer?
Yes.
Was there anybody else, any of the other gunmen who were there that you
I
recognized?
didn't recognize.
Anybody else?
No.
You'd never seen them before? You didn't know who they were, or you
No.
didn't see them?
It seems like a veil was over my eyes when the shooting started. I looked right at him, but I didn't recognize nobody.
Those were very tense times.
Very.
And everybody knew that something was coming
Yes.
because there had been several attempts on his life. His house had just been bombed the week before. How could security be so light and have 2 strangers on post in front of him
It was
in that
set up.
atmosphere?
That was a setup. It was a setup.
What happened to those 2 men who were on post? Did they disappear, or you don't
Yes.
remember?
They disappeared.
Last break coming up. We'll be back with our last segment. Stay with us. What do you think was behind his assassination? You say that there was greed and envy and jealousy. Malcolm said that he thought that perhaps it wasn't, it was bigger than
The Nation of Islam.
yeah, and that there were some government forces at play.
Listen, there were policemen, I believe, up in the place where they had the openings for the cameras or lights.
There were cameras there that day?
No, I don't know whether there were cameras, but I know up in the back, they have openings for like the lights and stuff like that. Policemen were up there. Okay?
Uniformed police or plain clothes?
I don't know whether they were, I'm not sure, okay? And I know it took them too long to come inside to do what they had to do, and the hospital was right across the street. And when they finally did come in there, it was ridiculous.
In the few minutes that we have remaining in this program, maybe you could just sum up what the significance of Malcolm was and is to you.
Well, in the few weeks I had a chance to spend with him in Africa, I found that he was a very principled man. He could not only teach, he believed in listening to other people. He was not a know-it-all. I greatly appreciated that. Malcolm was 10 years younger than I am. And
9.
well, or 9, yeah, because, no, this year I will be 84. It's just a matter of a couple of months. And what I had learned from him, I happened to get a job teaching conversational English to some of the staff people from China who had embassies there, Algeria, and Cuba. I had already made up my mind that while I was a Pan-Africanist, I was a proletarian, working class internationalist. And I was glad that these were 3 countries that I knew had put up a major struggle for their own freedom and whatnot. So I introduced Malcolm to the ambassadors of all 3 countries. I don't think Malcolm knew French, but I had studied French in high school under Jesse Fawcett when I was going to Wadley High. So I served as interpreter there. They had a beautiful exchange because Algeria had been through this same, fight against imperialism, neo-colonialism, and racism and all of that too, before they became an independent country. They had a very important thing. And before Malcolm left, the Chinese embassy put on a welcoming reception for him that included everybody. The Cuban embassy did that too. And I think that Malcolm, while he was a Pan-Africanist, he also saw the importance of what Cuba was doing.
You got to come back because we're running out of time. Promise us that you'll come back.
Oh.
Promise?
Oh, gee, I'm sorry.
We're just about out of time. I wanted to just get something very quick from you, Sister Jean. on what he means to you now? Very quickly.
There's an old Christian song, Jesus is all the world to me. Well, to me, Brother Malcolm was like that to me, all the world to me.
Thank you,
And I
sister.
don't have anything behind my name, no alphabets, no nothing, anything. But I can be so blessed and so thankful to say that I have a IKM degree.
Okay.
I knew Malcolm. I'm
Sister
very
Kadia?
happy.
Well, as usual, we lost a giant. And takes time to replace them.
There's not much more that can be added to that. We indeed did lose a giant, Malcolm X. Thanks for being with us in this edition of Like It Is. For transcripts, send $4 to Like It Is, 800 All News, 1535 Grand Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203. For a service, call 1-800-ALL-NEWS or visit their website at www.800allnews.com.
Thank you.